Welcome again, everyone, and this is second part of the week one lecture. And here we are going to talk about what are the business information systems, and just this is going to be at the introductory level. Each lecture that I'm going to start is going to have a set of learning objectives, and what they mean is at the end of the lecture, you should be able to understand the topics that are discussed in the learning objectives. So, for example, for this lecture, we are going to discuss how to compete in the age of information, describe the core drivers of the information age, and these are data, information, business analytics, and knowledge, and then explain how information systems enable business operations and also add value to the organization. And finally, once we have covered all of this, we will then define what are information systems and how they are different than IT or information technology systems and what are its key components. The way we are going to understand or get an introduction to information systems is by understanding the age we are living in. So we are living in the age of information economy, and everyone is competing based on the information that they have. And in particular organizations, if they get some information, they can make some evidence-based decisions, and then that can lead to better, you can say, outcomes in the end. So in terms of your daily life, you also rely on information. And for that, you might be doing some search on the Google and you get some results and that improves your information. The information that results and maybe builds on your, you can say, knowledge so that you can make good decisions is coming from maybe a fact. So a fact is something that is confirmation or a validation of an event or an object. So let me give you some examples of interesting facts. So for example, the movie Avatar took more than 4 years to create and costed around 450 million. Similarly, fact, all of these facts that I'm putting here are coming from Google, so you can also go get those facts. So this is just to give you a context of how an individual gets an information. So Lady Gaga's real name is Stefani Joanne Angelina Germanota. So this is, hopefully I'm pronouncing right, but again, a fact. And the most interesting one, we had a Super Bowl final just, I think, just few weeks back. So customer who wants to advertise their, you can say, business during the Super Bowl match. So it cost them around 2.6 million for just 30-second advertisement. Similarly, I'm going to give you some more facts. So Amazon is not a technology company. Its original business focus on selling books, and now it sells nearly everything. So again, Netflix is not a technology company. Its primary business focus is to rent videos, and now it's on a different business model. And Zappos is not a technology company. Its primary business focus is to sell shoes, bags, clothing, and accessories. The reason I'm sharing these facts with you is because we compete in this information age by understanding or processing these facts, and then we make decisions and also develop our knowledge. So this is really important to understand how we are getting these facts. So in our case, they might be coming from Google or from books or from magazines or any other information source that we are getting. But let's get into the most interesting conversation. So what about business managers, executives, and employees in an organization? So just consider maybe Coles, and they want to understand their business in terms of how their stock level is um, working at the moment, or for example, how their inventory levels are, what sales they are doing on daily basis, how the sales trend is growing. So all of this information is not available on web, or you cannot Google it, but they have systems in place that are capturing data related to these events. And if they are able to source that data and harness it and integrate it and manipulate it, they might be able to get this information. So this is why I'm saying, to compete in the information age, we need facts, organization need facts. Similarly, business managers, executives, and employees need facts, and those facts helps them to make decisions. And underlying the generation of those facts are the information systems. So they are the core that play a critical role in terms of delivering or maybe delivering facts to the relevant stakeholders. So, what are the core drivers of the information age? We can understand them if we understand the information hierarchy. So, it starts from the data, which can be an observation or an event in its raw form. And once you process it and also do some operations on it, it can be converted into a information. And once information is consumed and put into a context, it can help to generate knowledge in the end. So in order to convert data into insights or information and then into action, we require business analytics. That's why it's sitting at the top. So the core drivers in the information age are the combination of all of these four key components or concepts that are there in this slide: data, information, knowledge, and to do all of this, we require business analytics. So the information hierarchy that we explored earlier starts with data. And from the definition perspective, data are the facts that describe the characteristics of an event or object. So let me give you an example of a fact that, for example, in my store, the inventory contains 45 units of, or the 45 bottles of milk. So this is just a fact, but this doesn't have any meaning at this stage. But this can be stored or captured or transmitted very easily electronically. I can save it at any place. So in terms of classification of the data, it can be structured, unstructured, semi-structured, and then big data in terms of large or high volumes of data. So I'll start with structured data. So structured data has some kind of, sorry, not the structured data have very well defined format and standard, and that is why it's very structured in nature. Once you store data in that format, you can easily access it as well. So it's very, you can say, well defined and fully formatted in nature. The data that you will use in the workshops and the case study that's there is Morita loans. Once you will see the data in the Excel spreadsheet, you will see that it's very well defined and formatted as well. Similarly, data that we store in databases that capture business transactions is also very well structured and highly formatted in nature. Unstructured data is something that have no well-defined structure. There is nothing there, and the data is not easy to understand as well. So just consider your Twitter comments, Facebook posts. So these are very unstructured in nature, and they are not easy to process as well. Then we come to semi-structured data. This means that data has some partial structure or format, but it's not fully structured. So semi-structured data examples the example can be the email. For example, the email that we send. So if you see there is an information for the sender, then also the recipient email address, then you need to enter the subject as well. So all of these have well-defined structure, but the email and the content itself that we will write, so this is unstructured in nature. So in order to understand big data is the combination of all of these. So what it means is the data is in variety of formats. It's going to be in high volume because all of these data sets when combined will give you a large amount of data. And then in terms of its generation, so depending on from the source, for example, if it's machine generated data, logs that are generated, or maybe video surveillance data. So all of these data are generated very quickly or maybe in real time. So they are generated in high velocity. So this is what we associate with big data. And once we perform analytics on top of it, that's what we say big data analytics. So let us explore the data dimension a little bit more further in detail. So this is just an example of a structured data set. And if you can see just data set, just try to understand what kind of data is captured here. So this is a retail business context. And what we are capturing here is an order date and the customer who placed the order, then the sales representative who received the order, the product that was sold or the order was about, in how much quantity it was purchased, unit price in terms of how much price was it sold for, then total sales, so that's unit price multiplied by the quantity. The unit cost is the production cost, and the total cost is also in terms of how multiplying it with the quantity, and then the profit is the total cost, sales minus total cost. So this is what being captured in this table, and this is giving you a business transaction in terms of once a product is sold on a certain date by a certain sales representative to a customer. So this is how it's captured in the system. So if you see this data itself, it's not giving me any useful information, and just it's capturing an event, or you can say a business transaction. So this is what a business transaction looks like once it's stored in a database. So what if I want to answer these business questions? So who are my best customers and who are my least profitable customers? And in the next level, what is my best selling product? What is my lowest selling product? Who is my best sales representative and who is my weakest sales representative? So just these business questions, if you see their nature, they are very important. But just looking at this data, am I able to answer these questions? So it's very easy to say no. We need to perform certain operations on data, maybe reach the perspective in terms of what we are looking at it, and then we might be able to answer these questions. So what I'm trying to suggest here is we need to give meaning to this data. And that's the next step in the information hierarchy, where we go to the information. So information is the data converted into a meaningful and useful context. So in terms of how we deliver information to the end decision maker who consumes the information and makes the decision and takes the action, there are different ways that we deliver this information. So if you have heard about reports or managerial reports, so these are the reports that managers consume on daily basis. They might have a chart or a tabular table or different combination of charts. So this is what a report looks like. Then the next thing that I'm going to introduce you to is dashboards. So dashboard is just like if you have seen a car dashboard, it have multiple information in front of you. So for example, speedometer, also your fuel level, also different kind of indicators that are relevant for the driver to understand while you're driving the car. So dashboard have the same context in the business side. We give multiple information to the manager, and then manager can incorporate all the information that can help him to make decisions. So it can have maybe multiple reports combined into a certain, you can say, interface, and that represents a dashboard. Scorecards are more, you can say, strategic in nature in terms of they capture the business performance against target. So for example, if I start a business and I say that today's target is we need to sell 50 gallons of milk today. So that's a target, and I will be keeping track throughout the day through the scorecard. How am I meeting the target in terms of sales for today of the gallon of milk? So we will explore these information delivery, you can say, outlets, reports, dashboard, scorecard further down in the weeks. But just to give you the flavor in terms of once we convert data into a meaningful and useful context, it's delivered through reports, dashboard, and scorecards to the relevant decision maker. Okay, let us go back to the example that we discussed in the data dimension. And this is another level of that data, you can say, representation in the form of information. So what we have done here is we have sorted the data based on a single customer calls and the sales representative robot across. So just grouping the data across these two columns, this is how the table looks like. And this is just a snapshot. Obviously, it's not the full data, but just a snapshot to give you an indication of once we convert data into information, it looks something like this. So the information here is, for example, total quantity sold. You can see the total at the end. Same with unit price, total sales, unit cost, total cost, and profit. So what kind of information I can glean based on this report is Roberta Cross total sales to Coles were 8,629, resulting in a profit of 2,268. So just to calculate the profit, it's total sales minus total cost. So this is now a kind of information, and the information I'm getting is by performing some kind of analysis on the data. And in this case, it's just simple arithmetic across um, the measures or the indicators that I'm looking at, and then just grouping the data across the customer that I'm analyzing and the sales representative who have sold the product to the customer. So this is an example of information. Again, I will emphasize that when you will further explore Excel spreadsheets in the workshop, so you will be performing some kind of formulas or arithmetic operations on the data. So you will see how we can manipulate data, um, how we can play with data in the Excel spreadsheet that can lead to useful insights, and then that gives decision maker a better picture and more facts and evidence to make informed decisions. Now, in order to turn data into information, we need some mechanisms, or you can say a disciplined approach. And this is what business analytics is about. It's about turning data into insights and then insights into actions. So, business analytics is information collected from multiple sources, such as suppliers, customers, competitors, partners, and industries that analyzes patterns, trends, and relationships for strategic decision making. So the main thing to understand here is once we are translating data into information and then generating knowledge out of it, the business analytics discipline or approaches or techniques sits on top of it. It helps you to go from one step to another. And this is how we manipulate or maybe translate data into insights and then use those insights to take decisions. So the techniques that we use for business analytics are descriptive analytics, predictive analytics, and prescriptive analytics. At this stage, I'm just going to introduce you to these techniques at a very basic level. But as we gradually further grow in the course, we'll go to more, you can say, in-depth explanation of these techniques as well. So just starting from the descriptive analytics, it's about describing the past performance or history. So it's about analysis of the historical data in terms of what happened in the past. So a good example is summarizing past events such as sales and operations data on marketing campaigns. So at a very basic level, predictive analytics is about extracting information from data, that is historical data, and using it to predict future trends and identify behavior patterns as well. So using past sales data to predict future sales is a good example of predictive analytics. Prescriptive analytics is taking things to another step. So techniques that we use to create models that can recommend an action to the decision maker as well. So just to give you an example, an airline's using past purchasing data as inputs into a model that recommends the best pricing strategy across all flights, allowing the company to maximize revenue. So from a very basic level, prescriptive analytics not only predicts the future, but also gives you the next best action that can lead to value in the end. So again, it's on the decision maker if they want to accept the action and you um, use that in their decision making. But just to give you an overall picture, business analytics is the key discipline or approach or method that we use to uh, translate data into insights and then use those insights to make decisions. And the key techniques that we use are descriptive, predictive, and prescriptive analytics. So knowledge is the last level of information hierarchy that we are going to discuss now. And knowledge includes the skills, experience, and expertise coupled with information and intelligence that creates a person's intellectual resources. So in simple terms, knowledge is information that is synthesized and contextualized to provide value. So it is the information with most value to the organization because that's the uppermost level of the information hierarchy. So just to give you an example, knowledge consists of a mix of contextual information, values, experience, and rules. So just consider a housing price in a certain location. Once you combine them, can mean something, one thing to a real estate agent, another thing to a potential buyer, and yet something else to an economist. So it can have multiple meanings based on their own experiences. So knowledge itself is a richer and more deeper than information and more valuable because someone has worked deeply on it based on their own judgment and unique experience, and that's how they came up with a unique knowledge in the end. So knowledge also involves the synthesis of multiple sources of information over time. So that's how you develop an in-depth understanding in the end. So just from the organizational perspective, the key concepts around knowledge are knowledge workers. So knowledge workers are the person who use the intelligence tools and also manipulates data to make informed decisions. So those are the knowledge workers in the organization. Knowledge assets are the intellectual, you can say, capital or property of the organization, and they are the resources available to the organizations that they can use to generate insights and then take actions as well. Knowledge facilitators are the people who help the wealth of knowledge in the organization. So knowledge facilitators helps require and catalog the knowledge assets in an organization. So just to give you an overall picture, once we start our journey from converting data into insights and then insights into action, so again, business analytics plays a key role across this whole process. And then finally, once we get to the knowledge stage, there can be different kind of knowledge outputs that we develop in the end. So for example, there are different types to knowledge in terms of explicit knowledge, implicit knowledge, and tacit knowledge as well. So explicit knowledge is something that is there in the documents that you can see. Implicit knowledge is something that you convey to someone, but it's not documented. And then tacit knowledge is that you gain through your experience, and that's very hard to pass on. So you need to go through the certain experience to generate that understanding, and then you get that tacit knowledge. So this is the overall summary from the knowledge perspective of information hierarchy. Now we are going to do a comparison of the data, information, and knowledge hierarchy just to understand that how they are different from each other with concrete examples. So from the definition perspective, data is just simple observation of any event in the state of the world. Information is once we convert that data into a meaningful and purposeful context, and knowledge is the information that we can process which have high rich information, and it's in our mind in terms of including reflection, experience, synthesis, and context in the end. So characteristics: data is easily captured, especially when it's coming from the machines. It's often quantified, just like I gave you examples of 45 units of gallon of milk in an inventory. So it's easily transferred as well, and it's the statement or stated facts in the end. Information requires a unit of analysis. So unit of analysis means at which level are you analyzing the data. So for example, if you're analyzing it at the organization level, so your unit of analysis is organization. You can analyze it at the business process level. So its unit of analysis is the business process, or you can analyze something at individual level as well once you go to the actual employees. So here the unit of analysis can be individual. So data that have been processed then leads to information, and here the help of the human intervention here is required. So once we go to knowledge, the key characteristics are it's very hard to structure, particularly when it comes to tacit knowledge. It's very hard to transfer as well, and it's difficult to capture on machines. That's why it's at the level of humans in the end. So just to give you an example of data, daily inventory report of all inventory items sent to the chief executive officer of a large manufacturing company. Once we translate it into information, data inventory reports of items that are below economic order quantity levels sent to inventory manager. And finally, at the knowledge level, so inventory manager's knowledge of which item needs to be reordered in light of daily inventory report, anticipated labor strikes, and storm in Australia that affect the major components in the end. Now we are going to understand the information needs across different managerial levels in an organization. So every organizations have different levels in their management, starting from top level management, which includes C-level executives, chief information officer, chief executive officer, chief data officer, financial officers, and also board of directors. When it comes to middle management, it can include regional heads. So all those come under middle level management. And then coming to the most granular level, supervisory and low level management, which looks at, you can say, more detailed part of the business operation. So time horizon in terms of top level management, they look at bigger picture and they require a lot of highly aggregated data because they are looking at the planning for years to come, and they need more predictive information as well. In terms of middle level management, they need summarized data. They are looking data in the time horizon of weeks, months, can lead up to years, but they need integrated information because they are at the regional level. So they need information from the whole region, and most probably it's financial in nature because they are dealing with that kind of matters. The supervisory low level managers, in terms of their information needs, it's very detailed, it needs to be very accurate, and most probably it's not financial in nature. So for example, a store manager in Kohl's will be interested in how that particular store is performing in terms of its daily sales, how the stock levels are going up and down during the sales in the day. So this is how they are looking at, but they need to look at this information at a detail level, but it should be very accurate so that they can order for the relevant products and also see the performance at that level. So the source in terms of the information from which comes from, for top level management, it needs to be both internal and external. So the competition in corporation is very important. For middle level management, it's primarily internal with limited external, but the source for the low level management is internal. So you need to rely on the internal data sets and then come up with the insights so that you can make those decisions. So decisions for the top level management are extremely judgmental, but they require a lot of creative and analytical skills. For middle level management, it's relatively judgmental, but for supervisory and low level management, it's heavily reliant on the rules. And the rules are embedded in the business process. And that's why once you analyze it at the business process level, the performance indicators needs to be very detailed and accurate so that you can improve that process in the end. Now let us turn our focus on to the challenges that a typical organization face and why they require information systems as a solution. So let us consider how an organization is built first. An organization typically have department or functional areas, which looks like this. Every organizations, or in particular a large organization, will have an accounting department, then finance, human resource, marketing, operations, and sales. So in terms of functioning, all of these function as their own, you can say they look after their own operation, but to perform a business operation or as a business task, they need to communicate and information needs to flow across different departments as well. So in order to improve the business performance and even the performance of those individual functional areas, business decisions needs to be made. So this is where all of the data that is being generated in these functional areas needs to come to a centralized repository where we can make sense of it as a whole. So this is where we can create a single source of truth, and this is where information systems play a critical role. As we'll go further in the course and we'll be using the organizational context, so it can have multiple meanings, but I just want to clarify in week one now that when we'll talk about organization, it can have a process view or a functional view. So let's just focus first on the functional view, what it means. So the classical view of a business is based on the functions that people perform, such as accounting, finance, marketing, operations, and human resources. The business organizes around these functions to coordinate them and to gain economies of scale within specialized set of tasks. So information first flows vertically up and down between the positions or across these functions, and after analysis it may be transmitted across other functions for use elsewhere in the company. So this is what the functional view of the organization looks like. But in terms of process view of the organization, the primary activities are not limited to specific functions, but rather are cross-functional processes. So this is much more complex in nature. So for example, an accounts payable process might involve steps taken by other departments that generate obligations, which the accounting department pays. So likewise, we can have another example that the production creation process might begin with an idea from research and development. Then this is transferred to an operations organization that builds the actual product and involves marketing to get the word out, sales to sell the product and deliver the product as well, and support to provide customer experience as customer assistance as it's needed. So this view takes into account the activities in each functional areas that are needed to complete a process, and any organization can be described by the processes it performs. Improving the coordination among activities increases business profit, and organizations that effectively manage core processes across functional boundaries are often the industry leaders because they have made efficiencies that are not visible from the functional viewpoint. So, information systems are often the key to process improvement and cross functional coordination. So, once we go into the more in-depth analysis, both processes, either it's functional or the process view, are important to understanding the information systems itself. The functional view is useful when similar activities must be performed, explained, coordinated, executed, or communicated. So, for example, understanding a marketing information system means understanding the functional approach to business in general and the marketing function in particular. The process view, on the other hand, is useful when examining the flow of information throughout a business. So, for example, understanding the information associated with order fulfillment, product development, or customer service means taking a process view of the business. So, this is really important in terms of once we have the understanding of both the functional view and the process view, we'll be in a better position to make information system decisions in the end. So because we'll be better able to understand how different functions are operating, how different processes are connected with each other, and then we'll come up with the more in-depth plan of how information systems can be incorporated in this whole process. Now that we have covered enough information and I have given you enough background as well, we are in a good position to understand what are information systems. Just from the definitional perspective, information systems are defined more broadly as the combination of technology, the what that is, and the people the who implements the technology and the process that how we are implementing it and the which process we are using it in that an organization uses to produce and manage information. I would also like to take this opportunity to differentiate between information systems and information technology. So the focus of information technology IT is on technical devices and tools based in the system. So in the context of this course, when we'll refer to IT, it will means to all from the technology, all forms of the technology used to create, store, exchange, and use information. So just to give you a bigger picture in terms of how information systems fit within an organization and what are its key components. So people, technology, process, and data are the key components of information systems. And in the next week, which is around building blocks of information systems, we'll explore these key components in detail. Okay, so let's summarize what we have covered so far. So we started with developing an understanding of how to compete in the age of information, and then what are the key core drivers of information age. Once we understand those drivers, then we can talk about competing in the information age. So those drivers include data, information, business analytics, and knowledge. We also focused on different information needs of the different kinds or different levels of managers, and depending on their needs, we need to deliver the information according to their role. So for example, depending if it's top level management, then time horizon is different, the characteristics are different, and the kind of decisions they make is also different. We also looked at the process and functional view of the organization. So this is really important to think about the decisions that we make around information systems and the role that information systems play in the organization. And finally, we defined what are information systems and also just discussed what are its key components as well. At the end of each lecture, I am going to give you a set of review questions, And these review questions are just an example of the essay type short questions that you can expect in your first assessment. That's the test. So if you practice these questions, try to write essay type answer to these questions. You will be in a very good position to address the questions that you will see in your test in week 4 as well. So just to give you an example, very basic question: what is data and how it is important to a business? Very open-ended question. You can talk about what the data is. You would have learned from this lecture, and then how it's important to business. You can easily write about it. Similarly, all the other questions that I have listed here, just try to answer them and practice them. So the practice is really important. Once you will practice answering these questions, you will be in a very good position to handle any question that will come in the test. So this completes our first lecture, and before I finish the recording, I would like to say that now you need to apply or maybe think about the concepts that we have discussed in these lectures while you are also doing the workshops. So in the workshops, you will be using a case study, and that case study is just a context in place so that you understand what the business is about, what kind of data you are seeing, and that data relates to that business. But in the end, what you are going to do is you are going to learn about Excel spreadsheets, how Excel is a very relevant tool for the business to manipulate data, and then you are starting from the very foundational level in week 1. Thank you very much for listening, and good luck for the workshops.